Today we're learning how to configure and set up rules inside of Opus. Starting from our dashboard, we can get into rules on the left-hand side. And from here, we'll create a new rule container by clicking on the little arrow found here. I'll call it Finance. Let's create our Finance rule. So, we'll select our container and then go to Create. And inside of Create, we'll set our name. We're going to create an invoice rule with 5-year retention and then destroy. That is going to be the rule that we're going to generate. If I wanted, I could also have a more generic name and instead put the retention code into the description. Following the rest of the options, I'm going to keep Information Life Cycle enabled for this example. If I wanted to run this at a folder level basis, you can select Folder Location under Object Type. This allows you to dispose of an entire folder structure by just reviewing the folder rather than all the individual documents. In my case, I'm going to do this on a document-by-document basis. I can also do things like set a disposal class. That allows me to point out the different regulations or policies that apply to this rule. And lastly, I'm going to go here and select my content source for SharePoint Online. Once I'm done, I'll click on Next and we can go about configuring our rule. To start, let's set up the trigger. My trigger point is going to be when my created time is older than 5 years. I could also add in additional rules to this trigger. I can say things like my invoice has to be created older than 5 years, but also the modified date needs to be older than 2 years. That way I'm not destroying anything that has been edited or changed recently. I can also add in additional rules based on things like custom metadata inside of SharePoint Online, or I could choose some of the other fields made available to me, such as the last access time. This is the time the person last accessed the file itself. After that, we determine what we're going to do with the content. I can destroy my content and do things like leave behind a stub to act as a tombstone, which lets users know what happened to it. I can make it for that. I can destroy the content, but after it gets destroyed inside Opus, there's a grace period to say the content is not actually going to be destroyed until, say, 60 days later, when it is then purged. Now, if I don't want to destroy my content with my rule, I also have other options. I can move my content to a separate storage medium, archival storage. This could go to a blob storage location inside of Azure or other connected databases. I can also declare or tag my content if I want to update the records classification or if I want to add additional metadata on the file itself. I can export content too in a format that matches with a government agency as listed here. I can also move my content to a new location inside of SharePoint. This allows me to go through and say move content from an active location to an inactive or archive location inside of SharePoint. In my case, I'm going to keep with destroying my content, and now we'll go ahead and configure the approval process for this rule. If I don't want any approval process and just want this rule to run automatically, all I need to do is uncheck Enable Manual Approval, and it will just run. In my case, I will keep the manual approval running, and will select a manual approval process. I can then go here and select Finance Disposition Review that I've configured as an approval process. Optionally, I could go about configuring specific reviewers for this individual rule itself, but I'm just going to select my pre-created workflow and have Opus send my reviewers an email notification to review and click Save. With that, our rule has been created and it's ready for use. And if I want to review more about the rule, I can click on the drop-down and it will show me my criteria. So it's 5 years for the create time and then 2 years after the modified date. Keep in mind, once you create a rule, you can't go back in and change the name. So I might want to go back here and add a description to say it's plus 5 years to destroy, but only if the modified date is older than 2 years. Join us next time for where we look at terms and how we can apply our rule to a term itself.